to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. Today, I am joined by my friends Virginia Toledo and Jessica Geller of Toledo and Geller. I have to say, having been in business and partnership for so long with Vinny and Billy, I can tell you that there has to be a high level of respect and love and admiration for each other to get through all the ins and outs and ups and downs of the journey of building and running a business. And this is exactly what I see and I hear when I see and I speak to Virginia and Jessica. They've been running their business together for 17 years, and they've done so strategically and efficiently, growing their business to now 8 employees, and all the while making the adjustments along the way through recessions, changes, and the different conflicts and barriers that we face in our business. Now, before I tell you about Virginia and Jessica, let's take a minute to thank our show sponsor, MyDoma Studio, your complete designer toolkit. MyDoma makes it easy to streamline your processes, track projects, communicate with clients, and get organized. It's created by designers for designers, specifically to address what you need as a business owner. I've said countless times that the systems and processes are how you reach the next level of profitability. Now, if you want to get 20% off your first 3 months, go to mydomastudio.com/a well-designed business. Okay, Toledo Geller is a boutique firm that excels at delivering turnkey custom residences for singles, couples, and families who value exceptional design. With their mastery of both the design and construction process, Toledo Geller partners with architects and builders from the blueprint stage to completion, providing project management and development oversight. Their team works tirelessly to ensure the integrity of each project from start to finish, intent on not just meeting, but exceeding their clients' expectations. When Jessica and Virginia started their firm, they both had degrees in design, but they didn't start out working for other firms. So they missed that little piece of getting the know-how of how a business runs. Instead, they figured it out together, step by step, and learned along the way. Their determination to learn the business side of things paid off, and now their firm grows and flourishes. Let's dive in and let's talk with both Jessica and Virginia, how they've kept their business growing and thriving, regardless of which economic climate they found themselves in. Hey, Virginia. Hey, Jessica. Thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Hi, LuAnn. This is Jessica. Thanks so much for having us.
Hi, LuAnn. This is Virginia. Thank you.
So, ladies, we know what a road it's been to get to this interview today. And I really don't want to jinx it because it hasn't been completed yet.
Please don't. Especially during this financial weird time.
I know, right? Oh, my goodness. It's funny. We have really done yeoman's work to try and get this interview multiple times to happen, right? But I'm excited for it because everybody knows I have a soft spot for talking to truly seasoned designers. And then I have the extra sweet soft spot when it's a firm that I've had the pleasure and the honor of working with, through WindowWorks. And, I love when I know that the back end is actually well run. Like that's a fun thing because I always say to everybody when they come on the show, it's not investigative reporting. I'm not interested in finding out what you don't want people to know. And sometimes people have a really great lesson about how they do hiring or how they do Instagram, but maybe they don't really have great processes. So we just don't talk about those. Like,
Yeah,
right.
that's a
We
good
all have
point.
something we could teach somebody, wherever
Absolutely.
we are in our journey. Right.
yeah.
And that's the thing. And I know that it does take a while to get your process and systems and all the things down. But it is fun when I get to meet and speak with ladies like yourself that are in business almost gone 20 years now.
I
And like
can't
I
believe
said,
that. But
I
yeah,
know
that's accurate.
A big
it's
number.
crazy. And are you like that many years together or see, that part is wild. You look at you look like babies. Like I can't
Thank you.
even.
I'll take it. That Botox is working then.
We used to hate that, and we were like, no, we're not young. We just look young. But now you can tell me that we're young all day, every
Right.
day.
Well, I
Absolutely.
remember the first time I met you guys, it's got to be at least 7, 8 years ago, right? Maybe
Mhm.
longer.
Yeah.
It was the Essex Fells project. I feel like it was a project in Essex Fells. No, was it? I don't know. It doesn't matter. I'm all of a sudden I'm thinking it was up in Bergen. It doesn't matter. But I remember being on the project and actually thinking, "Oh, these are babies." Like
Right.
like you
And at
just look
that
so
point,
young.
we had already been in business for probably 8 years.
Right.
Exactly. And that's the thing. But see, that also happened. The more the appointment went on, and the more we went back and forth, I'm like, oh no, but they know what they're doing. Like I like just getting out of the car and seeing the two of you, beautiful. You're both beautiful ladies.
Thank
And
you.
I was just like, oh, this is cute. New designers. We're gonna teach them how to do window treatments.
Here we go again.
That's it. And then I was like, oh no, these girls have got it together. So anyway, so talk to me about like what would you say if I said what is something that you're the most proud about in running the back end of your business in an aspect of it, of the way you organize a project or a way, because you not only have to organize the project from your firm to the consumer, you have to organize it between the two of you and
Mhm.
then between the two of you and your employees. So that's a lot of pots or what is it, cooks in the kitchen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that layer of organization gets to be a little bit more sophisticated. So
Mhm.
share something that you're particularly proud about in the running of your business that maybe has come from years of doing it the wrong way, or you just always like from the beginning that was what one of you insisted on. What are you thinking, Jessica? You?
Yeah, I'll start. I mean, there's actually a ton of things I could say. I think one of the biggest ones, which is kind of a good thing, kind of a bad thing. We are, in terms of the business end of it, we're pretty much self-taught. So a lot of the things that we have learned by making errors, by correcting errors. Neither of us really had that training in another design firm, which we wish that we did. It would have saved a lot of gray hairs, but we didn't. And so we had to do it ourselves. And so we've really learned a tremendous amount along the way. And we were not in this new generation with podcasts, with Instagram. I mean, when we first started, their Instagram wasn't a thing. We
Mhm.
really had to put in the blood, sweat, and tears to learn all of this ourselves. Now, everyone is so fortunate coming up in the business that you can share ideas with people. It's a really collaborative community now. We we really we really had to, do it on our own. So I'm really proud that we were able to do that. We were able to make it so far. um, you know, this has been a very long time. We've seen each other through a lot of different life phases and the ups and downs, and we're still here chugging along.
Yeah.
Right.
And
And I would say, if I would expand upon that what you're saying, Jessica, about us not having maybe the proper training at another interior design firm, or we don't have business degrees and that sort of thing. And both of our husbands are great with numbers, and probably spent years upon years trying is the operative word, trying to give us advice on how to run it like a corporation. And we really wouldn't listen to them. Um, So
That's
it
hysterical.
wasn't until we got to the point in our growth where we said, okay, we have a lot of things nailed down, but now we need to understand our finances, and we hired a professional to do that. So I'm really proud that as two women, we have figured this money thing out too on our own, even though we have very supportive husbands, but we figured it out on our own, where we, you know, not to, say that one way is right or wrong, but what we have found is that a lot of the very successful businesses out there have a husband dealing with the finances. Successful interior design businesses, that's all
Yeah.
I know about. And we don't have that. We've been able to figure it out. And now, as we've gotten even more granular with our systems and our behind the scenes, we've hired another woman to, run that part of the business as well. So, woohoo.
Well, I mean, that's the WindowWorks model, right? That's what I've said all these years to all of you. Like, we had Vinny there. He was quote unquote CEO / COO. He was the operations guy and / CFO. You know what I'm saying? And it really is. And I think that is, there were a lot of drivers for starting the podcast, multiple things, personal, professional reasons. But one of them was always because there was finally that recognition that I was like, oh, I would have been like that creative entrepreneur. I would have had the ideas, had the drive, been able to market and come up with, A plus B equals C, and we're going to get this done. But I would have been kicking and screaming on the back end of getting the money and the operations locked down. And it was that awareness of watching designers struggle with that and then seeing, oh, we always had that with Vinny. And so you're right. High five to both of you for, yes, your husband's having the wherewithal to prod you, but they weren't in the business doing it for you. You had to do it. And that's not easy to do. It's not, when our brains don't work that way,
Right.
and also, that saying somebody said on the podcast, years ago, you're riding down the road at 65 miles an hour and you're building the business. And so the design clients are coming in, the projects are coming in, the tile has to be picked, the drapes have to be ordered, and you're like, oh, and by the way, I have to do the bookkeeping. Well, maybe that'll wait till next week. That's what happens to us, right?
So
it
many
keeps getting
hours in
pushed
the
to the
day.
curb. Yeah. Yeah, the things that we don't like to do get pushed to the curb. And that's when the firms don't succeed, right? Because they don't finally just go, okay, uncle.
Right.
Like,
right. And
this is good work.
And two of the professionals who helped us get to where we are when we needed to get to the next threshold, we actually found out about from your podcast.
Oh, who did you work with?
We work with Michelle and Peter.
Oh, awesome. See, the two of the, other than the Vin Man, two of the best money people that have ever been on the show, right? Yeah,
sure.
Kimberly to that list, and you've got the trifecta.
Yeah.
So Michelle Williams and Peter Lang. Yeah. Absolutely awesome. And I love it, because I love that you found them through the show, because that's exactly the back end support, that strong, capable people like yourself that, you, like you said, you had the whole front end, you had the whole design aesthetic, the education, all of the stuff to do that. And it is the primary reason for the podcast, is the countless successful designers from a creative standpoint that I encountered, that they were not making money. And it's just like, it's only because the back end wasn't supported.
And it's, we had an accountant for many, many years before that, and a bookkeeper as well, but it's a very different business model. And we were looking at it, not being able to understand the how and why, but we knew things were not lining up. And even, our spouses, our parents, anybody was like, it's why not? You hired this professional, but it's such a different model. And we didn't have the ability to understand what needed to change. But thankfully, we had a team in place that was able to help us make that. And I think that was probably, we were in our old office. We must have started working with them like 6 years ago, I think.
Right.
Wow.
I would say.
That's awesome. You know, I remember Peter was just on the show recently in the last 2 months or so, and he was absolutely talking about, some of the critical differences in the way the books are kept for a design firm versus your regular garden variety, cupcake factory. It is
Exactly.
different. And if your CPA and your bookkeeper aren't aware of it, you can really get yourself here's what it is. It's the blind leading the blind. Here we are, we're creatives, we don't really understand it. Then we have a finance person who doesn't really understand it, and we wonder why at the end of the year none of it makes sense. It's like, hello.
Right. And I think for both of us, while we are creatives, we are both type A. I can say that, right, Jess?
You can
type
say
A.
that. It's 100% accurate.
We love our lists. We're detail oriented, and that just didn't sit well with us. So year after year, we're like, okay, we're making money, but are we really making money? What does the future look like? And so we only could let that go on for so long before we needed the control and understanding of it. And I mean, I could say for myself, I definitely did it kicking and screaming, because those spreadsheets and numbers, and my brain literally like shuts down, I feel.
Yeah.
So it is training a muscle I am not familiar with or necessarily had a desire to train.
Right.
But it was really well worth it now. So now, looking at spreadsheets and forecasting and all of that, it's very comforting, in fact, where before it was the opposite. And now it can help me sleep better at night, knowing, okay, this is what the next 6 months are going to look like. For better or for worse, I can deal with it as long as I understand what's happening. And then, because we are who we are, we then have to put things in motion to make things better if they're not looking so good. And that was part of, what we wanted to talk about today too, or at least one of the topics to cover about, pounding the pavement, even almost after 20 years, because you can't just sort of like expect things to keep going smoothly, especially when we're, going through uncertain financial times in the economy and that sort of thing. We've seen this before. So now, being almost 20 years in, we've lived through '08, we've lived through some slowdowns. And so we know that you can't just sit around and wait for things to get better. If you have a business model that you are looking to scale, and you have a staff that you feel responsible to keep employed and fed at the end of the day, as well as your own family. So
that's right. It's a huge driver. So let's lean into that and talk about that a little bit. So first, just to recap it a little, is there's that moment when the finances and the operations and the numbers are intimidating. And they're also, when you said your brain shuts down, I'm with you. Like, there's certain tables and charts that my team sends me, and I'm like, who sent that to me and thought I was going to read that? Like, honestly, like, go back and put it on a coloring book page and then send it back, because then I'll understand it. Like, stop. Like, it's like
color-coded charts work really well for me.
Like,
I
your
like
brain
that.
doesn't even want to try it. That's what it is.
Totally.
It's like, and what's so funny with me is I always say, I am 60 years old and this is my business. I am not doing it against stream anymore. Like, nobody has to make me do this, right? Yes. So I'm like, just deliver it to me that I will at least want to look at it, right?
That's right.
But numbers, they can't be like transposed to coloring book pages. They have to be in a certain way. So we all get that moment of, it seems just more than I want to deal with. We know, I know that you have to have this exact same feeling. I never look at anything like that and think that I'm not capable of understanding it, that I don't have the intellectual capacity. It's not that. It's more what you said. It just is like in the format that is like pushing crap uphill. It's like, can we just push it down the other way? Like, you know what I mean? Like I know if I dig in and I, get my muscles out, I can do it, but I don't want to, right? And so, and the next stage is, I love that you identified it. The next stage is, you know what? We're grown-ups here. This isn't good anymore. Like, we have to do it. And then the third stage is, and I've noticed every one of us has, when you get to the third stage, it's just what you said, Virginia. It's, now I can sleep at night because I know tomorrow morning I either got to get up and dial for dollars or we're good. But either way, there's no boogeyman in the closet. Like, I know what's going on, right?
It's that uncertainty that gets us all riled up, but you can solve that by understanding what's going on.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So again, you've been through the 2008 recession. You've been through the COVID scare that we were all going to go out of business, and then the COVID scare that, oh my God, how am I ever going to keep all this business going, right? So you've been through the ups and downs of the cycles that happen to us from external forces that affect our actual business. And the thing about what we know is, as entrepreneurs that have employees, it doesn't matter the reason. So the thing is, what we know as entrepreneurs with employees is it doesn't matter if the forces are external or the business slowdown is because we didn't market. When we got eyeballs, we have responsibilities. Mm-hmm. And so talk to us about that. You started to go into that, the dialing for the dollars and pounding the payment. What do you guys do at this, 2 decades in, to actively make sure that your pipeline is looking healthy?
So I'll mention something, and I'm sure Jess has a whole list of her own that come to mind. Top of mind, I think, when we entered this year specifically, just because it's so relevant, we all were bracing for the slowdown. We didn't know if it was going to be a recession or just a slowdown or what have you, but all of these sort of inside industry publications and news, media were saying that people were going to spend a little bit less in the interior design realm. And if they were going to spend money, they were going to focus more so on renovations, meaning they were staying put in their home. They weren't selling it because they weren't going to be able to get what they could because of the rising interest rates. And so they were going to focus on kitchen redesigns, bathroom redesigns, because that gave the most ROI when they'd be ready to sell in 2 or 3 years, when hopefully things would come back to sort of normal. And so with that, we realized, if truth be told, if a client comes to us for just a kitchen or bath at Toledo Geller, it's not cheap. Let's just put it like that. It's much more cost effective to roll it into a bigger interior design project. That's just the way it works for us when we've analyzed these things before. So what we realized was, okay, how do we cater to this client that is probably going to be calling about these projects, and we're not ready for them. So we created these package programs for kitchens and baths specifically, which, if it was 2 years ago, we didn't have any desire or interest in doing. We didn't have to. But here we are, no ego amigo, like one of the Peloton instructors says all the time. And you have to do what you have to do. Okay, so now we're probably going to do a lot of kitchens and baths, which we like to do as part of a more holistic project, but we might just have to zone in on that now. So what are these, packages look like? Let's run the numbers. Usually, how many hours does it take to do this from, team member A or team member B? How else can we incentivize this, package, etc. So that was just one example of responding to what we were bracing for. Luckily enough, things are now sort of shifting, and the phones are ringing for bigger projects.
But we have noticed that the majority of the calls that we have gotten this year, in fact, are remodels. So
isn't that something?
It was very true, a really reliable prediction, and we were ready to meet it.
What I love is, it's funny because at Exciting Windows, we had a guest speaker at our conference a year ago, Mark Richardson, and he is a 5-decade career writing on business in the home remodeling space. And what he said to us was, the top of the food chain, the luxury client, is always there. It's always there. And entry level stuff is going to be there. But it's that big middle section that is going to say, no, we got to save for college. No, we got to pay our mortgage. No, we got to keep the car, in repair, and we just needed a transmission, right? But to the way you guys recognized it, the luxury client is always there, but shows up differently sometimes. So now the 1%ers are going to do what they want to do. But if we talk about the 2%ers or the 5%ers to the 10%ers or the 15%ers, right? Like, that's still the luxury client. I mean, especially where we are in the Northeast. I mean, there is a big percentage of people that are in probably the top 20% income of the country. And I love that, we always say on the show how you have to track your data. And so I noticed when you were describing that, Virginia, that you were like, we went to our data. How many team members, how many hours does it take to do this? And what would be profitable if we still packaged it this way? And so thinking about that, you packaged it this way. I'm making an assumption, but maybe there's something else to add to it, that it was more like if you're if that same client a year ago or 2 years ago had come to you, it would have been like whole first floor or whole house, and the presentation would have been different. And so now, in order to meet them where they were, where you expected they were going to ask for just a kitchen or kitchen and bath or whatever it is, you wanted to have parameters around it. Is that why you packaged it? So it's like there is no conversation about, well, what about the foyer? Like, so
That's
talk
right.
to me a little bit about that thinking.
Yeah, it's partially that. And then it's also the execution part of the project is where the numbers really start to escalate, which is why Virginia said it's not beneficial to that sort of client to do the execution with our firm. We are detail oriented. We will catch everything. We will meet
Oh,
with the contractor on site weekly because we want to make sure that everything that we have designed is being implemented in the exact right way. We're going to be tracking all of the deliveries, the receiving, everything. And so that's where it's sort of, you've probably heard before, that time management is hard to calculate. We don't know. Is
right.
it going to be super straightforward, or is there going to be a few bumps in the road along the way? How much time is going to be involved? So this sort of package is, we will design it and hand this whole thing off to you, and God bless. You will have
See ya.
everything down to the grout color. The every detail will be there for you, but it's in your hands. And a lot of people don't mind doing that.
Right.
It,
Right.
it's speaking to them where they are at. And if they call us for a question after the fact, then if it's something fast, sure, we answer easily. And if it's a little bit more involved, they just get billed hourly. But we're not there managing that entire process.
That's smart, because what happens is, it's funny because the other thing that Mark Richardson had said to us was literally what you have found to be true. He said, have your super luxury availability, whatever that service is. He said, but then you want to actually have ways for people to work with you in finite wrapped up situations, so that it's the benefit to you, that it doesn't make you stretch out and do things, but they can still visualize it, understand it, and buy it, because they still will be there. And so that is the epitome of that. And I imagine, there are probably times where, the luxury client because I mean, me with Window Works, I've worked with all of them too. It's like, I want it to be inexpensive, or I want it to be cost effective. And you're just like, okay, sweetie, like, you would know a cost effective thing if it bit you in the, what, like, stop. You're just saying that because what's going on in the world, and you think you need to do that. Like I always say that we have certain clients that they couldn't spend their money in one day because it's too busy making more money while they're just sitting there doing things. Right. And so,
Oh, that's a good one.
right. So I have found with that super luxury client is there are times that they will come and say, no, 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 no. This one, we really need to keep an eye on it. Like, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes they do, but I'll bet you've also had situations where somebody's like, here's the thing, here's the kitchen. And like their fifth question in, never mind, like, give me the full service, right?
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
Have one of those right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they actually can afford it. It's not a can afford, it actually is. And there was something happening, the stock that day, they thought they
That's
should
right.
be cautious,
Exactly.
but
That's
2 weeks later,
exactly
they're
it.
billionaires again.
That's
Right.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So,
We say, it could be from one month to another, and a client feels very differently about how they're spending. So
yeah.
those things certainly happen. So yeah, so it's really about just being aware of what the business looks like, and being prepared for all of it.
Right. And
Following all
also,
those methodologies.
and also being flexible, right? If we just said that we followed one path and that was it, we probably would never have made it this far. So we opened the doors in 2006. So a couple of years later was 2008. And 2006, we had some really high-end clients. We were very fortunate to start our portfolio with a real bang, and then they disappeared, and we had to figure it out, and we weren't willing to give up on what we were already beginning to grow. And so we were really flexible, and we figured out very quickly that we needed to start a model where it didn't take a lot of our time to design. We called it design on speed. And at that time, we didn't have an office. And so we would go to either of our apartments and we would sit together, and we would we would go meet at the D&D, wherever we were, but we were focused and we were not leaving until we finished. And it was very regimented, and it made us get through that hurdle. And
That's right.
we were very happy to see that time pass the rearview mirror. But we always knew. We've referenced it many, many times in the years since then, that like, okay, well, we know what to do if we need to do that again. Obviously, we're not going to get to do that again at the level that we are now 20 years later. But we learned.
But you do the version of it. What you just did was the version of it.
Exactly.
That's right. And that whole thinking and being ready so that we don't have to necessarily do design on speed again, should that ever happen again, is really just looking at all types of different ways to bring in new business, and not assuming, like I said earlier in the show, that work is going to come to you. So the difference is, at this point in our lives, is that while we are, still confident in the fact that we've grown a portfolio and that we have repeat clients and they tell their friends and their family, we are not comfortable with just relying on that as our source of business. And, podcasts like this are wonderful. Thanks for having us. They certainly, help us for some recognition in our industry and what have you. We are still very much aware that we have to think out of the box. And I know that's a cliche thing to say, but we're always thinking of different ways to connect with people that could be a client or that could connect us to a client. So that doesn't stop. That entrepreneurial sort of mindset has to work that way in order to be successful. And we feel that much more responsible to think that way because of the people who we keep employed. And it's not just us anymore. So, things like real estate mixers, let's say, that we put together, and we'll bring in, other people that could benefit from meeting a realtor or a broker. So that'll be architects, insurance agents, mortgage people, landscape architects, that sort of thing. And that all gets funneled into our marketing budget for the year. So at the beginning of the year or the previous year, end of the previous year, when we're thinking about our marketing dollars, long ago, it used to be, oh, where can we put an ad to run? And like, no shade on running an ad if that's what's worked for you, but it didn't work for us. And what we do find to be beneficial is relationship building. So when we're thinking about our marketing dollars, we're thinking about how can we create events or things like that we can connect with more of those ideal people. So we are, I would love the younger designers or people who are new to the business to not get discouraged, because I know that when we were younger, we had all of these ideas. We were big on ideas, but being the visionaries, but the execution, these ideas would sit on a page or on a, an email exchange that we had, and it never went anywhere. We're fortunate enough now to be in a position where we have someone who can execute on those ideas, our ops manager. So now when these, great crazy ideas come out of our brains, she can either say, well, you're nuts, or I know how I can break that down into small nuggets, and it could become something that we can aspire to and get done eventually. So, but the point is that whether you have a person or you don't, if you want to be successful and sustainable, you have to think about all those opportunities. So, it could be an intimate mixer in your own, local community with maybe it's parents of a certain school or what have you. We're big on tricky trays with the right school, right? That's something where a consultation that you can donate to that school can lead to that parent having a really good experience with you and telling her girlfriend. Those things happen, but you have to be willing to think like that. So it's different, and it's not the normal interior design PR, which is very heavily focused on getting published. that doesn't work for us, like I mentioned before.
Right.
And we enjoy this as well. I think personally, I love thinking about different ways of growing the business and the meeting of the people part as well. So it's really circular for us.
One of my favorite things, which I don't even know that I want to share, but I will, is that we threw a housewarming party for our client that we just finished. And so we told them, it's your guest list, it's your party. They invited the people that they wanted to, and we were there as well, but we hosted it. And so it put us in the same room as the people that they're friends with, that they associate with, neighbors, coworkers, all of that. And you never know what's going to happen from that. And then the client was extremely appreciative because they got to show off their new home to all of their friends. It looked exactly how we wanted it to look because we lit the candles, we put the flowers out, and it was a project that we were extremely proud of. And we got to see it shine at night too. It's not very often that we get to see our clients' homes in the evening, and it's a very different, transformative experience.
I love that.
Seeing it
I
at
love
all
that.
times
So
of the
when you
day.
say you guys hosted it, do you mean that you paid for the
We did.
food and the catering and the
Mhm.
bars, the wait staff and all of that?
All of that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. So
That's in the
yeah.
marketing budget, right?
Right.
So what is that equivalent to? That could be one page in ARC Digest for a month, right?
Yes.
Where this was the ability to, as Jessica mentioned, really mingle with the people who are experiencing our space. It's almost reminding me of, we just visited Kips Bay Show House this week, and how much more beneficial it was when the designer who designed the space was in the room.
100%.
Right. So you got all of the hows and the whys behind the design solutions. And
It
that's
was
what
so
we
romantic.
had.
Yes.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. That's the thing. What's funny, as a side note, I have had conversations with designers that have said to me, oh, should I do a show house? I'm like, yes, if you're going to work the show house.
Right.
But if you think you're going to do the show house, set up your beautiful room and not work it, then don't bother. Like, don't bother, because you have to be in that room. Do you have to be there 24/7? I don't know. I think it depends on the hours of the show house, but like definitely the weekends. Like, definitely you have to be there weekend, because it is that, because you can walk by, it's a beautiful room. Great. It's a house of beautiful rooms. Like, come on.
Yep.
There isn't a room there that you walk in and you're like, meh, that's bad, right? And it's what happens is when the designer's standing there and the designer says, oh, welcome, come in. And then you hear the story of the design and why did they pick this theme for this room? And that is the beginning, to your point, the two of you, the relationship, and who visits Kips Bay, but usually, typically, the kind of client who's looking for the next new designer to work with.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And it's harder to remember a room. It's easier to remember that person. And I remember that woman talking to me about X, Y, and Z. So, that matters.
Yeah. I love that. So having a client appreciation event in their own home is like having your own show house event.
Exactly. And you can have,
the same
depending
thing.
on how many installs you have that year, it could be, 5, 6, 7 show houses, quote
Wow.
unquote, that you could have for yourself. Right.
Wow.
So-
Have you ever had a client say to you, thanks, but no thanks? Or do you make it as part of, like, some designers are like, photography is non-negotiable. So when do you bring this do you wait to see if you get along and you really like them, or do you do it in the beginning? How do you do it?
It's case by case basis. If it is the right person, personality wise, has the relationship been really lovely that we would want to spend extra time with them. And we can also get a sense of, are they the type of people who like to have visitors, or
right.
or are they really, is this design really for them to be appreciating on their own? And then also really analyzing, well, do they work? Do they have people of influence that we can be in front of? It's
right.
We really think about it, and it's the type of thing that we actually don't decide to do until towards the end of the project. When we look at the calendar, we say, okay, well, here's where we're installing the project. We can't wait too long. We don't want them to mess it up.
Right, because once they
Yes,
live in it, it's not going to look like the way you left it.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's definitely timing, personality, and all of that. And so that's just one one vehicle, let's call it, that's a little bit of a different, way of thinking. The mixers are another. And then we do things like crazy things. And in my neighborhood right now, there's a beautiful custom lake house that's being built. And so, okay, they're going to get an interesting little box from Toledo Geller with a sweet note, how I walk my dogs by their house, and then a few photos of other, beachside or coastal homes that we've done, saying, I see the architecture that's kind of happening here, and these are some projects we've done that we think could be a really good fit for you. If you're interested, call us. There's a little candle, some matches. It's like no sweat off our back, easy enough to do. I can put money that there's not another designer delivering a cute little box to their doorstep asking for their business, right?
Right.
But you have to try if it's something that you really want to do.
Yeah. It's funny because I have to tell you this. What's interesting is we have a member of Exciting Windows that he does this for his window treatment business. And because he does it,
what does he do? I want to copy.
So what he does is he went and on I believe it was on Canva. He created a box that had his logo and was pretty on the outside and inside with whatever design. And by the way, we're window treatment people. I guarantee you it doesn't look like your box. I don't care how good he is. I guarantee you.
Canva has some pretty good templates. So, it's probably pretty good.
I just say it. So he went out and he made these boxes. They're probably about 10 by 12 and about 3 or 4 inches deep. And you open it up and it's got his logo or whatever, or it's got a picture of his work or whatever. And he puts in it, he'll gather memo samples from Hartman and Forbes or Hunter Douglas or Kravet, and he'll fold them up and put them in. And then whatever else, I don't actually know what else goes into it, but it's that same thing. When he's driving around and he sees a house that's in construction or a house that was has a renovation on or something, he'll go and he'll just knock on the door and say, and I think there's some candy or something in it to make it, like you said, the candle, something pretty. And he puts them out and he does. And they work for him just like they work for you. And it's pretty funny. And so since he told all us about that last fall, I think at least half a dozen of our members have all ordered. We came back to we have a conference twice a year. People are walking in I got my box. I made my box.
Everyone's getting a box. Right. But, I think there's still the masses may still feel like that's above them. Right.
Yeah.
Or beneath them, I should say.
Beneath them.
Right. Like, I don't want to, it feels like I'm begging for the business, that sort of thing.
It's how you set yourself apart. Right.
Right. I mean, we are a service-based industry at the end of the day. And I think that when you do something like that for someone, you are already setting the stage for what you deliver, this thoughtful gift, because you're leaving them with something, whether or not you call me, you might not, but you're still, we're taking the time to deliver this to you for a small introduction. And hey, we certainly have experienced where it may have not worked for that person, but they may speak to someone and say, hey, so-and-so, I went on their website because of course now I'm intrigued. Who are these weirdos that left something on my doorstep?
Exactly.
And while I am not going to work with them, maybe you want to work with them. That happens. So
it does. It always, that's the thing. It's it's again, to repeat what you both said, you're building the relationship. So there's a new home in the neighborhood. It's in your style, your aesthetic. It's the type of demographic, and you're just starting that relationship. And, there's all kinds of creative things you could do. If, you could put a little gift card into a local restaurant. You're new to the neighborhood. This is the best Italian joint in town, or blah, 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 right?
Yep.
So now the mixer, just pull that apart a little bit. So, to me, me, I do the lunch and learns at WindowWorks. To me, that's the same mixer. Let's put 30 designers in the room that all need window treatments at some point in their life, right? So the same with you. So you are inviting realtors, architects, landscape architects, probably builders, contractors. And are you inviting homeowners, or it's a professional mixer? How are you? What's your approach on that?
Professional mixer.
Yeah.
A professional mixer. And what we try to do is limit the amount of people per profession, right? So it's going to be really intimate. This is 10 to 20 people, also because we are financing these things as well.
Yeah.
So there's alcohol, we pick a venue, what have you. We are the only interior designer there, obviously. So we want it to be fruitful for us, obviously. That's why we're doing it. So, and we want it to be beneficial for everyone going. That's why we're not trying to overload them by the amount of professional by profession. So
Right.
there won't be more than 2 painting companies there,
Right.
if anything like that. Mm-hmm.
That makes perfect sense. And so you're not doing these at your studio. You're going
Nope.
to local restaurants or something.
A restaurant, we've been using a hotel out of Florham Park that has a great room for
the
that.
Park Avenue Club or something there.
Yep,
Whatever it
it's
is.
actually
Yep.
right
Yep.
next door to the Park
Okay.
Avenue Club.
Okay.
Park Avenue Club's a little bit more money, LuAnn. We're trying to do this on a budget. I know. My girlfriend's big networking group does it there. I was like, oh, we'll check out the Park Avenue Club. I'm like, oh, no, we won't. We will go right next door at the Archer. It looks fantastic.
Oh, but the Archer's beautiful.
The Archer's great, right?
Oh, I love the Archer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting because that's a good half hour, 40 minutes away from where you are located. Aren't you guys up in Bergen?
We are, but we live in different counties as well. But also, our work is pretty
All
widespread, and the trades that are coming to this are also sort of widespread.
Nice.
So, yeah.
I love it. And what do you do that 2 or 3 times a year? How often are you doing that?
So we're trying to do once a quarter.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. That's awesome. And then do you invite trades that you haven't met, or is your painter always there, or you're doing new ones? Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So when you say those dialing for dollars, it's not exactly the same, but that's our ops manager calling all of these people we have never met. And, we're looking at the numbers just to make 100 calls to get 10 people in.
Yes.
But we've met architects, we've met landscape designers, all these other professionals that I've mentioned. And some of them may say, we just had a call with a group and they said, we can't make your mixer, but we still want to have a conversation with you. And so we did a Zoom outside of that. And another great builder out of Connecticut, was just too far for him, obviously, and said, love to bring you guys up for lunch and tour one of our properties. So
nice.
Mm-hmm.
That's nice. I love that because what you could do is you could always do an appreciation luncheon for the trades that you work with all the time if you want to. This is not that purpose. This is a different person. This is to expand your network of people who might refer you when they have a project. So this painter, this architect, this landscaper will think of you. I love it. So good. Now, one thing I want to talk about before I let you go, you guys will tell me if there's something you want to talk about before I let you go, but is this ops manager? Because, this sounds like the fairy godmother that we all need, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I could tell you, I just hired an integrator. So I am 2 weeks in and I am just, it's sort of like, I don't know. It's sort of like you join a gym and you're just waiting for it to all work. You've been going and it's and I am just okay, integrator, I'm waiting for this to feel like a home run, right? So we're only 2 weeks in, but to me, integrator, ops manager, very similar role, right? So is it a full-time role in your firm? How did you find this person? How does that integrator work? I get it. My brain dumps all the creativity and that person makes it into a spreadsheet. But how do you guys work with your ops manager?
So she is full-time. She's been with us for about 1.5 years now. We used a headhunter to find her because the rest of our staff we have built organically, the two of us, over time, and we get comments all of the time about how the personalities all really seem to mesh very well. It's a really supportive, collaborative environment. And for 8 women, that's not an easy feat.
No, ma'am.
But for this position, we knew that we needed some help because even in terms of interviewing them, it's not a design role. It's not a role where we're the experts. We know how we run the business and how we want it to be run, but we don't know how to interview for that. So we outsourced that and they gave us a few candidates. We interviewed this woman, Divya, who's with us now, and she had a passion for interior design, but as she says, and I hope she doesn't kill me for saying this, but she's a lady in the streets and a freak in the spreadsheets. She is really good with her numbers. She loves numbers. She loves spreadsheets. Excel is her best friend. It is always open on her laptop. She's got 20,000 sheets at a time. She's amazing. But it is very much what you're saying. We have an idea and we can, at this point, of course there was an onboarding period and a lot of it was like, holy cow, what do you mean you have 20 projects at a time? And how does a project go from A to Z? She had to really understand seeing a project from start to completion. I don't think she fully got the whole spiel until she had onboarded a client and saw that through, because when she first started, of course, projects were in various phases. And it was tough to piece it together. But once she was able to see that whole thing from beginning to end, I think she really got the hang of it. And now it's, of course, just second nature. She looks at it from a very different eye than we do. And oftentimes has ideas that are really excellent and will help us, whether that's with the client process, whether it's with how we stage our execution of a project, whatever it is. She's looking at it with a completely different outside lens, but it's very helpful that she was passionate about the field. She saw the post on Business of Home, so she wasn't going to,
IBM.
Monster.
She
I don't
wanted
even
to
remember
work.
where you look for jobs anymore.
Yeah, ZipRecruiter or something. Monster. No, now it's Indeed and ZipRecruiter. Get with the times, Jess. Come on.
Thankfully that's not my role anymore. I don't have to look at the resumes. I can just meet the person.
Hysterical.
But yes, she's really good at like taking an idea and running with it and making things happen. It's been really wonderful for Virginia and I to have, another person to be at this upper management level with us and help us and get us to the next level.
Right. And even the background with corporate, and it's funny because I know I said before our husbands who were both corporate guys and would not understand why we'd get so flustered, Jessica and I, about things that happen in the business. Like if a client called about something that they weren't, particularly happy about. And we'd just get all worked up. And, my husband's like, what, just deal with it like XYZ. And like, no, it's emotional. It's this, it's that, we just couldn't separate. And I think, many other, your listeners can probably understand that dilemma. Having her and her corporate background, she can really take the emotion out of it while still being, I'll use the word soft in her delivery as to how we're going to handle this. Like, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, we are going to take care of it, but this is how we got here. These are the facts of the matter, and that sort of thing. And the relief that we have because we internalized so much of that. I mean, it's an emotional, physical thing that happens when you carry that much weight. You have 20 projects, it could really be compounded. And the fact that we're out of that, the delivery of that communication, not even CC'd on it almost.
Wow, that's awesome.
Instances. And I mean, just like Jessica said, there was an arc, right? She had to be ramped up and we had to make sure that her language was to our, that we were comfortable with that. Now we're totally fine with her delivering those messages without us sort of, babysitting all of it.
I love it.
Yeah.
So she doesn't, so the lesson here is, just like my integrator doesn't have experience in this exact business, has the experience on how to systemize a business. And that's what their experience is. And I agree with you. With a design firm, I don't think it's a prerequisite that somebody prefer a design firm, but it certainly is a benefit to you that she enjoys the industry and she appreciates it, and that you found her. She knew, like, when she's looking for jobs in the business of home, like you mentioned, she was looking to be with a firm. But that's the idea. It's like a lot of times we take a person, a designer that we have in our firm, and they started as an intern or a junior, and now they're a senior, and now they're a project manager. Sometimes that person can be the unicorn that's going to be an ops manager, and sometimes no. Like, you're expecting that creative brain to switch because you need them to, because you need to keep up leveling, but it's trying to fit a square peg into a round hole sometimes. And so just recognizing that there's people out there among us in the wild that actually like to organize crazy visionaries like us. It's like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, our
Right.
schedules are so precisely planned out by her, and she's looking at it from okay, well, it takes you this long to do this, then it's going to your first presentation is going to be 3 weeks from this date, and then the next thing is going to be, and where we would be like, do we have time for this week? I don't know. Let me look at my calendar. It's really,
She's like, you have time, sit down.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Because what was crazy. I mean, she scared me when she first came on because, like integrators do, they need to break things down into steps. So once she understood the process, and I think it could be helpful for some listeners to understand how we did this, how we helped her understand the role. I got this idea from one of my cousin's companies, she works for a major company, and they brought in someone. This is how they did it. They had this new employee sit down with every team member for a few days. They were their shadow. It didn't matter if it was, I'm being facetious a bit, but like the janitor, right? Understanding how the janitor does his job and how it integrates to everyone, how it affects everyone else's job. So she sat with each team member and understood, oh, this is what you do every day. And this is how it affects person that's sitting in chair C over there. Okay. And then she broke down all of the steps it took to get a project from the first initial phone call to installation day and, rectifying any issues. I don't know. There were like, 1,500 steps.
Right.
We were like, wait a minute. Is that really how long it takes? And we have how many? Oh, no. Then it was like the overwhelm started. But she was like, no, this is really all that it takes to bring a project to fruition.
Yeah. No,
and
you guys are massive.
It was crazy. It was crazy.
It's funny because that is the exact same training process that Jessica Harling uses. Jessica Harling, she comes from the window treatment industry, but she's working with a lot of interior design firms, and her specialty is, like she's an outside consultant that will come in and you're like, I have no process, I have no system. And she will put your business to a system and then teach it to you and move on, right? Like, or she'll write your SOPs.
That's great.
And she also is a recruiter, and she'll hire, and but she did an episode, and I'll put it in the show notes with training. And when she was talking about training like a window treatment salesperson, like me training a Kim or something, right? And she was like, she's got a 4-week calendar. Now, design is a whole lot more complicated, right?
Right.
But she is like, week 1 is all of this, week 2 is all of this, week 3 is all of this, week 4 is all that, week 5, 6, and 7 are all of this. And then you start over again if you need it. Now the person's in the field and kind of in their job, but you go back. But the thing was, week 1 was spend time with every person in the building. So I had never sent a brand new window treatment sales specialist on an install in a training process. But now when we onboarded 2 new people last summer, you've been working with Richard, I think, they went with Billy for 2 or 3 days each. Him and Jennifer went with Billy because we know that if as a window treatment salesperson, you understand what Billy's doing in the house, we know that it makes it better what you do when you're there in the beginning. Is there crown molding? Is it there is a blah, blah, blah. But we never did it before. So I love that she did it. See, that's operations people. They think like that.
Yep. It makes so much sense.
Oh my God, I know.
It sounds easy and so straightforward, but when you are building the business, like you said, that another analogy, going 65 miles per hour and trying to, that even the simple things can it's not obvious to you because you're just spread too thin.
What I've learned is just like those things aren't obvious to us, it's the same thing where as amazing as Divya is, she's not going to put out the vision for your company for the next 10 years. Like, she'll be like, okay, what do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? I'll figure it out for you. But like, if you said to her, hey, Divya, what do you think we should look like in 3, 5, and 10 years? She would be like, we'll still have these good processes, right? like, whereas you guys would be like, we should this, we should that, have a project, we should have this, we should have a license, we should, you come up with 10 things that you could visualize. Yes. So it's just recognizing the differences in our skill sets, right? And so that's where I want to end it. I want to ask you each one final question. What is like I can see that you have a lot of overlapping skill sets. You're both visionaries. You're both, the drivers. You're both achievers. But when you look at each other, I'm sure there's something that you each appreciate about the other and say, oh, yeah, see, Virginia has this or Jessica has this. And maybe you have it too, but maybe the other one leans in or has it a little bit more that they own it. Is there something that you would recognize as each other's superpower? Curious about that.
I think Jessica has a lot of superpowers. She does a lot, but I think she's just has this refreshing way of looking at things from the design perspective. And many things. I referenced that social media thing before where I get all down in the dumps, and she's like, no, you're not going to think like that. But I would say she can look at a project with this very sort of refreshing way of doing something really different and not caring if it doesn't necessarily make sense, or it hasn't been done before. Yeah. It's this different way of looking at things. Yeah, that could be it. That's actually a really good word. And that seeps into the way she thinks about certain situations where, I can sort of recoil and be like kind of scared about things. And she's like, no, it's going to be fine because of this and that. And just have that courage or that, that confidence to feel like it's going to be right because of X, Y, and Z. And then I feel so much better about it.
That's a great thing to have in the person on the other side of the table.
Yeah, it's really helpful.
Both of you. And Jessica, how about you? What do you see in Virginia that she brings to the table that you appreciate?
I mean, just like Virginia said about me, I feel like my list could be endless. So I'll cap it. But she also has a serious confidence about herself, especially on a job site where there can be some challenging personalities with male general contractors. And from the very beginning, she has always, said they won't look at me any differently. And she always teaches them a thing or two. They'll say, no, that's not how we do it. And I'm telling you, from 20 years ago, she would say, I may never have done this before, but I'm confident that this is how we can get it to happen. And her understanding of architecture, her understanding and knowledge of building and construction is really special and superior and makes a world of difference. She's always said, I remember when we were working, we started our firm in New York City and we had a lot of white boxes. And she was like, we are not going to have a vanilla box. Our architecture has to be strong. Everything else can follow after that. And so if that means that we don't get to spend as much money on furniture, but everything else is right on the interiors, they can purchase new furniture later if we need to. It's always been, the architectural element has always been really important. And I think that that's something that sets us apart as a firm from other designers in the area who are just coming in and working with the existing conditions. To Virginia, if the shell isn't right, the project's not going to be right.
Interesting. So you know what they say about that. That is having the point of view, right? It's having the point of view as a firm. And I love that the two of you, I've never asked you those questions. I didn't know what you would say, but it's clear in observing you all these years that there is a bond and there is respect and there is admiration. You couldn't have survived all these years. You couldn't build a team of 8 women behind you, like you mentioned, Jessica, earlier, if it doesn't start at the top, the respect and the love and the admiration. And so I was just curious where it's rooted and, because that's really what happens. I mean, I have the same thing with Vinny and Billy. They drive me to drink, which is fine because I like to drink. You know what I'm saying? But at their core, there's something that I've always just went like, but this is what I can count on you for. Mm-hmm. This is what you bring to us. And this is something I can't imagine us doing without. And so I assumed, and I was right, that there was that same feeling with the two of you. So thank you so much. You guys are just the best. I just love both of you so much. And I adore you. And I respect the business that you've built and the way you've built it together and the success that you've achieved. And just hats off to you both. And thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much, LuAnn.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
So many takeaways from this conversation. One of the things I'm so proud of with WindowWorks is how we've been able to come through the recessions and the uncertain times in business. There have been years where we held our breath and hoped we were going to make it. There have been times when we held our own salaries back in order to keep paying our employees, but we always kept going. We always kept marketing. And at the end of the day, we always came out stronger. Jessica and Virginia remind me of this journey that we had. Learning how to run a business isn't easy, and they did it on their own, self-taught every step of the way. It's impressive. And let's talk about a few of the things that they did that helped them keep going no matter what challenge was in front of them. The first was creating those set packages when they noticed that their customer base was shifting to wanting smaller projects like kitchen and bath remodels. I love what they did for so many reasons. The first was knowing themselves and their own standards. They knew that in order to offer the level of service that they bring to a design project, it was not going to be cost efficient or practical for their clients. But they also could see that due to the economic climate, that this was going to be a demand. So they had a couple of choices. They could stick to their standards and either charge outrageously, isolating many potential clients from their firm, or they could lower their own rates and lose out on profit. But they didn't do either of these. Instead, they took a step back. They looked at their data. They figured out what they could realistically offer without sacrificing their standards for quality in the project or for profit. And they used this information to create packages where they offered design and handed everything else over to their clients. Okay? There wouldn't have been anything wrong with that first option, but they would have missed out on clients who might later be their full service down the road client. Right? Instead, they used the changes in customer preference to guide them to a new offering. Their package creation was the perfect mix of being flexible and able to adjust to new financial climate and still knowing your value, your worth, and your non-negotiables. I love it. I also love the idea of the hosting of the housewarming party. What a great way to offer a premium level of luxury service and put yourself in the room with the people who could potentially be your next clients. They pointed out while the print ads didn't work for them, they learned that relationship building did. And I think that knowing what works for you is key to everything that we do. Right? We have to figure out what works for us. We hear all the ideas of all of our friends, our colleagues on the show and in real life, but you do have to take back what you can visualize yourself doing. All right. And their housewarming idea reminded me of Andrea Highsmith from Ash Interiors. When she was in the show on episode 663, she shared that she does something similar with her clients. So check that episode out for some more ideas. All right. The ability to do something above and beyond for your clients is always important, especially when it's a win-win that lets you build your network up at the same time, right? Jessica and Virginia are clearly always looking how to build their network in new strategic ways, and that's key for surviving recessions and economic downturns. Finally, I don't want to overlook the value of the onboarding process they used to bring in their new operations manager. The onboarding and training process is so important, especially when we're talking about bringing in someone who we are hoping is going to implement our big ideas, okay? They had her sit down for a few days with all of their employees, so she got the big picture understanding. You know, it's very similar to the training process that Jessica Harling laid out for us in episode 634. So if you need to bring on new employees or you're about to, whether it's an operations manager, an integrator, an implementer, or just a junior designer, head over to that episode 634 for some good ideas on a process to do that. My biggest takeaway from Jessica and Virginia is that moving through economic hardship or different financial climates throughout your business takes work. It doesn't happen by accident. Don't underestimate it. You can't just put your head in the sand, cross your fingers, and say, abracadabra, I hope it'll be fine. No, you need to establish within your company and yourself an atmosphere as an entrepreneur of flexibility, of outreach, and always leaning into the drive that got you doing this business in the first place. Okay? So that when the time comes that you might have to make a change or adjust, you're ready. You're not knocked on your feet by it. You're like, yeah, I expected this, right? I expected that I would have challenges like this throughout my career. And let me just figure out how to get through this one, just like these smart ladies did. Thank you tons for listening today. Thank you, Jess and Virginia. You guys are great. I adore both of you. You're just such powerhouse women. Thanks for showing up and doing this with me today. Decide to be excellent. Thank you for joining me today. This podcast is a production of LuAnn Niagara, Inc. If you want to know more about me, my books, or LuAnn University, go to LuAnnNiagara.com. And if you are interested in having WindowWorks help you with your next window treatment or awning project in the New York, New Jersey metro area, go to WindowWorksNJ.com to learn more. Have an excellent day.